There is a cemetery in Mannsdale, Mississippi, that sits behind a small Gothic chapel built of hand-pressed brick. The chapel is called the Chapel of the Cross. It has stood in that same spot since 1852. People have been worshipping there for over 170 years. And for almost as long, people have been seeing her, a woman in the cemetery. She wears mourning clothes from another century, dark fabric, a veil, the silhouette of grief. She moves through the headstones slowly, as if she knows exactly where she is going, because she does. She always goes to the same place, the same grave, and when she gets there, she weeps. More than one person, over the years, has approached her, concerned, compelled, only to watch her disappear before their eyes. Not run, not retreat into shadows, disappear. The grave she visits belongs to a man named Henry Gray Vick. The stone above him reads simply, "Entered into rest, May 17th, 1859. He was 20-something years old when he died. He was 4 days away from his wedding. To understand why she is still there, why she has never left, you have to go back to Christmas of 1855, back to a girl of 16 who had not yet learned that love and loss can arrive in the same breath. Her name was Helen Johnstone. She was the youngest daughter of a widowed woman of some standing in Madison County, a woman who had poured her grief into building something lasting. A great house called Annandale, just down the road from a little Gothic chapel she had already built in memory of her late husband. That chapel was the Chapel of the Cross. Helen had grown up in its shadow. She knew every stone of it. The Christmas that changed everything. Helen was visiting her sister's home when a carriage mishap kept a young man stranded for a few days. His name was Henry Gray Vick. He was from Vicksburg, descended from the very family that had founded that river city. And by all accounts, he was exactly the kind of man a 16-year-old girl might lose her head over. Handsome, well-bred, a few years older. The kind of easy confidence that came from never having wanted for much. They fell in love almost immediately, the way you only can when you are young and have no reason yet to be afraid of it. Mrs. Johnstone approved of Henry Vick. She could see what he was, what he could be for her daughter, but she had one concern. Helen was only 16, far too young, she felt, to marry, so they waited. A long engagement, years of letters and visits, and the particular ache of wanting something you can almost but not quite have. Helen turned 17, 18, 19. Finally, Mrs. Johnstone relented. They set the date, May 21st, 1859. They would be married in the Chapel of the Cross, the very chapel Helen had grown up beside her entire life. She began decorating it immediately. About a week before the wedding, Henry left for New Orleans. A quick trip, practical. He needed to choose his suit for the ceremony and pick up a few things for the house they would share after the wedding. It was the kind of errand that should have taken a few days. It was the kind of errand that should have meant nothing at all. While he was in the city, he stopped into a tavern for a drink. And there, across the room, was a face he had hoped never to see again. A man named James Stith, a former friend. The kind that becomes something worse when a friendship ends badly. Henry and Stith had quarreled, permanently it seemed, more than a year before. Henry had made his peace with it, let the friendship die and moved on with his life. Stith had not. There in the barroom, Stith slammed his glass down on the counter and announced, loudly, that he would not drink in the same room as Henry Vick. Who was, Stith declared, no gentleman. In the upper classes of Southern society in 1859, that particular phrase, no gentleman, was not merely an insult. It was a declaration. It was the kind of thing that, once said in front of witnesses, demanded a response. Henry lost his temper. He went for Stith's throat. Friends pulled him back. And in the chaos of being restrained, flushed, furious, humiliated in front of a room full of people, Henry Vick issued a challenge to duel. Stith accepted before Henry had finished the sentence. It did not take long for Henry to understand what he had done. Early in their courtship, years ago now, he had made a promise to Helen. He had promised her he would never participate in an affair of honor, a duel. He had given her his word. He went back to Stith and tried to apologize. He tried to walk it back. Stith refused. The challenge had been made. The challenge had been accepted. There was no undoing it now. Though dueling was not illegal in New Orleans in 1859, the two men, through their seconds, agreed to move the duel to grounds outside Mobile, Alabama. The police there had been tipped off. They were already moving in to stop it when Henry raised his pistol and deliberately fired into the air. He missed on purpose. He had made a promise to a girl in Mississippi, and even here, even now, even in this, he was trying to keep it. Stith did not miss. He placed a single shot in the center of Henry Gray Vick's forehead. Henry was dead before he hit the ground. The date was May 17th, 1859, 4 days before his wedding. In the confusion that followed, James Stith and his companions disappeared. They were never heard from in that part of the world again. Back in Mannsdale, Helen Johnstone was decorating a chapel for a wedding that would never happen. She was counting the hours. She was planning a life. When Henry's friends arrived at Annandale to tell her what had happened, she did not take it quietly. Between bouts of sobbing, deep, hysterical, inconsolable grief, she managed to insist on one thing. She wanted Henry's body brought to her. She wanted him buried in the Johnstone family plot, at the Chapel of the Cross. They honored her request, and then Helen made her family promise her one more thing. The space beside Henry, the plot right next to his, was to be left empty, reserved. No one else was ever to be buried there. Only her. When the time came, she would lie beside him. For months after, Helen spent her days at his grave. Every day, no matter the weather, sitting on the wrought iron bench beside his headstone, weeping, talking to him. Her family grew frightened for her. Eventually, Mrs. Johnstone made a decision. She took Helen to Scotland to visit the Johnstone family there, and they stayed away for over a year. When they came home, Helen was different. Not healed, not whole, but functional, present in the world again. Approaching 30, she married a minister named George Harris. She told him plainly, before the wedding, that she would be a good wife to him, that she would honor her vows, but that she would never love him the way she had loved Henry Vick. He married her anyway. Helen Johnstone Harris lived a long life. She died in 1916, 57 years after the morning she learned Henry was gone. She was not buried beside Henry. She was buried in northern Mississippi, beside George Harris, the man she had promised to be a good wife to, the promise she had kept. At the Chapel of the Cross, the space beside Henry Gray Vick remained empty. It is still empty today. There is a version of this story where everything makes sense, where a woman marries, builds a life, and finds peace with what she could not change, where grief softens into memory, and memory softens into something you can carry without being crushed by it. But then there is the other version, the one that people have been reporting for over a century, the woman in the cemetery, the one who moves through the headstones like she belongs there, who pauses at a particular grave, a tall stone, simple, and brushes the leaves away with her hands, who traces the moss-softened letters of his name, who weeps. Witnesses have described her as entirely solid, entirely real, not a trick of the light. A woman, grieving, at a grave, until the moment she isn't there anymore. She never made it to that grave in life, not in the way she meant to, not the way she had asked for. The space beside Henry stayed empty, and Helen stayed away. But whatever remains of her, whatever piece of a person survives the life they lived, found its way back, to Mississippi, to the chapel she grew up beside, to the grave of the man who fired into the air to keep a promise he had made her. She is still there. She is always still there. Henry Gray Vick entered into rest, May 17th, 1859, and beside him, an empty space that was always meant for her.